In today's video, I'm going to show you a video made by a popular atheist on YouTube who's helping Christians leave the faith. This isn't a joke. Look at the comment right here, as you can see on screen. So as I watch this video, and I'll show you some of the clips in a moment, a question I had in my mind was, what about this video is helping a Christian like this who's saying they're on the way out and this is a video helping them leave the faith? I press play.
And has the Lord really blessed Abraham in every way? It wasn't that long ago when God told Abraham to murder one of his sons, and the other son was banished, and his wife just died. I mean, if those are blessings, please, God, curse me.
Who was Isaac? Isaac was a son who was miraculously given to Abraham, right? So Isaac didn't die physically. So clearly, Isaac is a sign of blessing on God's behalf. Secondly, he talked about Abraham being told to send a son away. And this is somehow a contradiction to the Lord basically blessing Abraham in every single way. The next problem here is, this is a son named Ishmael who God didn't tell Abraham to have, right? Abraham did this on his own volition, and it was ultimately a sinful act to go and marry a woman and try and do the miraculous work that God had ultimately promised him. But the irony of this particular situation is, even though Abraham went and committed a sin and had this particular son, he was blessed, the son that is, by God because of Abraham. And the third thing is the most foolish and makes no sense. He says, Abraham's wife died. So think about this. He's saying the Lord didn't bless Abraham in every single way because his wife died. So the logic that Hemant Mehta is using here is that if the Lord is going to be a blessing in every way to Abraham, his wife ultimately should never die. In the second clip, he's going to go on to talk about the Canaanites, and he's going to make two bold statements which again are inaccurate.
Okay, Abraham is telling his servant to fetch him a wife for his son Isaac, but not a local woman. They're all garbage because they're not the people Abraham grew up with.
Now that's clearly not true anyway, because we see different examples throughout the Old Testament Bible, even into the New Testament Bible, where Canaanite women were ultimately born again, ultimately had a relationship with God, and ultimately were even grafted into Jesus's family tree.
And just in case you've forgotten why Canaan is so problematic, let me remind you. This one time, the father of Canaan, Ham, saw his father Noah naked. So Noah put a curse on the Canaanites.
And he talks about how the Canaanites are cursed because of Noah. When really and truly, when you go back to read Genesis 9, what Hemant is actually alluding to, Noah did not curse the Canaanites. He cursed one particular individual. Now, if illogical statements and poor Bible teaching wasn't enough, Hemant, at this point in his third clip, just goes to outright lying.
Abraham is saying he controls this land, and he wants a wife for his son who comes from their homeland to come back here. And if the servant can't do that, he is dead to Abraham.
That is a bold-faced lie. He literally reads the passage in the scripture and then says that comment, when clearly when you read the passage, Abraham says, if you can't fulfill the oath, then you're not going to be bound by the oath anymore. Don't worry. And these are the kind of things which this professing Christian in his video chat section is listening to, thinking he's saying things accurate, but he's, in this case, just bold-faced lying. Now, the servant goes on his journey, and Hemant Mehta turns around and says, look, the servant here is basically being creepy and is doing weird things to lure a wife for Abraham's son, Isaac.
And is the servant trying to lure women to him with 10 camels? Also, it's really creepy to just go hang out in the place where women gather so you can scoop one up to be someone's wife. Let them have their space.
They've just come from a long journey. Where would camels need to go after a long journey? This is quite simple. They would go and refresh themselves, right? So they're clearly at the well for a specific reason. It makes sense. Now, this is something he doesn't even clearly understand from the context of the passage. Him coming to the well with 10 camels would clearly be a deterrent. Why? Because giving 10 camels a drink of water is actually a very arduous job. If he's coming to get a wife for Abraham's son Isaac, number one, he didn't come by himself, so he'd ultimately need more than one camel. Logic just says that quite clearly. And number two, if he's ultimately going to be taking a wife back, as we see in the narrative as it unfolds, and ultimately people that are going with that wife, is going to need more than one camel for his people that he's going with, and also ultimately the people that are ultimately going to come back with him as well. Now, if the first lie that I highlighted in today's video wasn't enough, he doubles down and lies again.
If a woman offers the servant some water for him and the camels, he'll know she's kind, and then he'll steal her for Isaac.
Again, a bold-faced lie. He reads the passage in the video where the servant is praying and saying, God, please, can you do a miraculous work to showcase to me the specific individual woman who's supposed to be the wife that you want for Isaac? Hemant turns around and says,
if a woman offers the servant some water for him and the camels, he'll know she's kind, and then he'll steal her for Isaac.
If entertainment and delivery are the things which help you make a decision, then fair enough. But as Christians, we're supposed to be seeking for truth, and he's been deceptive and spoken falsely many times, or just been ignorant if he hasn't been deceptive. And this is what's helping a Christian leave the faith, apparently. Now, in the next clip, he starts insinuating that Rebecca is extremely young.
Wait. How do we know she's a virgin? Who is verifying this information? Is she wearing a scarlet V? I guess the only way you could tell she's a virgin is if she's really young. But if that's the case, why is she about to be Isaac's wife? That's weird and wrong. There is no good way out of this.
And as you just saw, he talked about, look, how do we know that she's a virgin? That means she's most likely very young. And if that case, why is she marrying Isaac? Now, that's not true, because just logically speaking, right, as Christians, we believe traditionally that Moses is writing this, right? So Moses, hundreds of years later, is documenting what's ultimately happening. And how young does he really think a woman who is giving drink to 10 camels actually has to be, carrying a water pitcher on her shoulder? In his mind, Rebecca's only worth is being able to give camels a drink.
How did Rebecca prove her worth? Well, she poured water, and that's it. She poured water. That is the full extent of her skill set.
This is not about Rebecca's worth. We'll see as the scripture goes on that Rebecca has much more worth than ultimately just giving drink to camels. But this was the servant Eleazar's way of having something miraculous happen, where which it can indicate to him who specifically she is. Now again, more ignorance, or worse, more just outright lies. He's going to talk about how the servant Eleazar, who's come to get a wife for Isaac, is now apparently hitting and making advancements on Rebecca.
Whoa, I thought we were looking for a wife for Isaac, not hitting on the first woman who stops by the well. Weird pickup line too. Hey, woman I've never met, who's your daddy? She
just did work, and it's funny enough, he was talking about her worth. Many people look at this as him rewarding her, giving her a payment for the work she ultimately just did. That's one part of it. But what if she happens to be from a different family or a different place? That's why he's asking for her father's name. Now, again, we're going to get into a big problem because Hemant blunders again.
That's a very specific answer. Whose daughter are you doesn't usually require the names of your grandparents.
We today will say, look, we're so-and-so. First name, second name. They didn't do that back then. Their second name was ultimately the name of their father. So by Hemant Mehta saying to people, look, I'm Hemant Mehta, he is in fact using his grandfather's name, but he's here in the video making fun of someone using their grandfather's name to identify themselves. The irony of all ironies.
You know what we haven't heard yet? Rebecca saying, yes, I'll marry him. Because her opinion does not matter to any of these men. At least she consents, which is a thing we don't hear that often in the Bible. You know what we haven't heard yet? Rebecca saying, yes, I'll marry him. At least she consents, which is a thing we don't hear that often in the Bible. You know what we haven't heard yet? Rebecca saying, yes, I'll marry him. At least she consents, which is a thing we don't hear that often in the Bible.
She's happy to say, look, I will go right now. She doesn't want to wait 10 days. She doesn't want to wait a month. She's willing to go right now. Now, the next clip I'm about to show you is the funniest part of this whole video.
They didn't even show her a picture of the man she was about to marry. She arrives and has to ask, who's approaching us? Oh, is that my new husband?
Yes, today we have phones and we can take pictures on our smartphones. But this was about 4,000 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. So what picture was Rebecca supposed to receive? About 4,000 years ago, they used to write on clay tablets and write on stones and hieroglyphics and things along those lines. He wanted them to give her a clay tablet and say, look, this is your husband. So a Christian listens to this atheist lie, entertain, and make a fool of himself and leaves the faith. And this is exactly why we make videos on this particular channel. If you like this video, definitely hit the like button, subscribe, and watch this video right here. It's another video which will help you avoid being deceived.